Today I'm going to show you a few ways to create simple icons inside of Illustrator. Let's begin by starting a new letter-sized artboard and then familiarizing ourselves with some of the tools we will be working with. First, we're going to make sure that we're all using the same advanced toolbar. Over in your toolbar, drop down to the three dots. Next, go up to the list on the upper right hand side. Make sure you've selected Advanced. That'll give us access to the same tools. Make sure we're seeing the same thing. In our toolbar, we'll be using the Selection tool, the Direct Selection tool, our Shape tools, and if I click and hold on those, notice there are tools embedded, and that is what you see when you see that white arrow. We can also peel these tools off and have them be a floating panel. Next, we'll be working with our Shape Builder tool, and we can peel that off if we want as well. And finally, our Pen tool. So these are the basic drawing tools that we're going to be using while we make icons. Over on the right hand side, we have our Properties panel, and this is because we're in an Essentials workspace. In addition to our Properties panel, we're going to go to Window and Swatches and have our Swatches panel as well. We can leave this floating, or we can dock it by dragging it next to the Properties panel. In Illustrator, there are a few basic elements that you'll be working with. I'm going to draw a simple shape to help us understand these. So I have a rectangle shape with a yellow fill and a black stroke. It is made up of 4 anchor points and 4 paths. With my Direct Selection tool, I can manipulate these points or these paths and create new shapes. I can use my Selection tool to move it around and use the bounding box plus Shift to scale that object up. If we look at another simple shape, this time we'll make a ellipse, I not only have those anchor points and paths, but I also have direction handles. And direction handles happen anytime there's a curve. And I can pull those handles to change how that curve looks. How these direction handles work is this point is created and then this point is created. And the path is trying to get from this point to this point. The direction handles are saying, hey, before you come down to this point, come towards us over here. And that's how you get a curved shape. Another thing to remember is the same drawing rules that you've learned in InDesign work inside of Illustrator. So a shift draws a perfect square. Using the Alt or Option draws from the center out. And I can combine that with the shift to draw a perfect square from the center out. Additionally, I can use the space bar to move and place the object as I draw. So I'm just going to select all with Command A and hit my delete key. So let's get started on those icons. Icons are really just a matter of combining geometric shapes. So if I want a pencil, that's simply a series of rectangles and triangles. So I'm going to start with a long rectangle. I'm going to zoom in just with Command plus, and I'm going to add another shape right at the end. And I just deselected that shape with the selection tool. Now I'm going to grab my rectangle, and I'm looking for a shape to be drawn right at the end where it's intersected, and I can draw from the center out if I want, position that however I want, and if I don't quite get that place right, I can just use my selection tool to expand that. Now I'm not too worried about color at this point. Now I'll draw my triangles at the end. And so notice I'm grabbing that star tool. So if I start drawing a star and then use my down arrow, I can get a triangle. So I'm going to draw my triangle, and then I'm going to move this into position. I can use my bounding box to rotate this, get this aligned, and move that into position. Now to scale this down, I can use my corners as well. So I'm not holding my shift key, and I'm just scaling this. And so that's how you can begin to create different icons. So our next simple icon is going to be a person icon. So in this case, we're going to start with our ellipse tool, and I'm going to draw the person's shoulders. And so I don't want this to be a perfect shape, but now I've got a problem. I want to cut this person right here in the middle. Well, I can use one shape to cut another shape. So I'm going to use my rectangle, and making sure that I overlap the path I want to cut, draw my rectangle. Now I'm going to select both shapes, use my shape builder tool to either remove or add sections. So in this case, we're going to subtract both of these areas. To subtract, I hold down the Option or Alt key and just drag. Now if I want to, say, remove the center part, I can just Alt click. And I'm just Command Z after each of these steps so that you can see them. If I wanted to combine these all into one shape, I can just mouse over all of them. And if I wanted to create three separate shapes, I would just need to click, click, click. Separate shapes means that I could use my color in different ways for each of those separate shapes. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these bottom two. So that's our person's shoulders. Now I need to draw their head. And so I'm using my guides to align to the center of my shoulders. Then I'm going to use my Alt and Shift to draw from the center out. And I notice I need to move this up a little bit, so I'll use my space bar. And when I'm good, I always let go of my trackpad or my mouse before my keys. Now this is where you can start to create some interesting details. So that's not bad for a person icon, but let's say I want to add a little more detail. I'm going to copy the head by holding down Alt and dragging, and I'm just going to create a little divot in the shoulders. So I'm going to Shift Select. Remember last time when we selected, we used a marquee trick. You can also shift and click to create multiple objects. And what I'm interested in doing is just removing this portion of the head. So again, back to my shape builder, holding down my Option because we're subtracting, and I'm going to subtract both of those shapes. Grab my head, bring that down a bit, and I have a very simple person icon. If I wanted to use this, I can select it all, group it, and then I can use my Alt to copy that. We can also manipulate the points and paths of a shape to create new shapes. So I've drawn a circle. I'm going to grab my direct selection tool, selecting anchor points. I'm going to hold the Shift key and bring those in just on the bottom and the top. And what I'm going for is a flower petal. That's a little wide, so I can switch to my direct selection tool, bring that in a little bit, and that's pretty good for a flower petal. Now I can use the transform tool to begin copying that shape. I'm just going to select and move our group of people up there so they're out of our way. So now that we've created our shape, we're going to transform these petals around a circle so that we get a flower. So to do that, you take the degrees of a circle, which is 360, and you divide that by how many petals you want. So let's say I want 7. So 360 divided by 7 is 51.4 and some odd change. So I'm going to grab my rotation tool, and I first want to set my transform point, which is right there right now. To do that, I'm going to Alt click at the bottom point of my flower petal. I'm going to enter 51.4 into my rotation, hit preview, and that looks good. And instead of hitting OK, I'm going to hit copy. Now that I've transformed this once, I just need to repeat that. So I can go up to Object, Transform, and the keyboard shortcut is Command D. And just think duplicate. So we're going to duplicate our flower all the way around. So just with our simple shapes, we've created a flower. If I need a more organic shape, that's a good time to use my pen tool. So with my pen tool, I can add points, and you can see it before I've even put that second point down, it's previewing where that path is going to go. Now to make these more organic, I need to add those direction handles. To add direction handles, I simply click and drag. And it's that dragging of that direction handle that starts to create that organic shape. So let's say I want to just create a stem for our flower. I can click and drag. I can bring this handle back up, and I'm just holding my Alt down, add a little base, and click and drag again. So now my flower has a petal to it. Now this object, if you notice, is in front. So I can Control click, arrange, and send that to the back. I can also go up to Object Arrange, Send to Back, and move that shape to the background. Now I can use my swatches panel to start using some colors for these. So let's say on our pencil, I like the main color, but I know I want to change my pencil, and I know I want to change my eraser. Well, there's not really a good color for an eraser here. This is where I need to open my swatch libraries. So if I click this little book icon at the bottom of my swatches panel, it's going to bring up all kinds of libraries I can use. So I think we should have out our flowers, and let's bring up skin tones. Now we're going to go back to our pencil, and I think that this pink color will be ideal for a pencil, but I don't really like the stroke I have on there. So I can either click my stroke in my appearance properties panel, click none, or if I decide I wanted it, but I wanted it a little bit lighter, I can just make it smaller and it's not as pronounced. I'm going to leave this one yellow, but we're going to change the size of it. So I think that looks pretty good. And then for our pencil tip, again, we'll change the size of our stroke, but let's get a nice brown color. So we're going to use the same technique we used with our flower on this pencil tip. So I'm going to go to my object, I'm going to transform, and instead of doing a rotation, I'm going to do a scale. Now this is a little bit of guessing, so I'm going to do a uniform scale, and let's say we're going to make this 20%. I can preview to see how that looks. Now I've got a little triangle, and that little triangle is going to be filled with black. So now we've used our color library to work on our pencil. With people icons, it is fine to make your people icons a simple color. If there is a reason to use any type of skin tone on people icons or a hand icon, you want to use these skin tone libraries, or you want to use that Simpsons yellow color. So for our flower, we're going to select that, go to our flowers, and we'll make that hot pink, and we'll use this nice green, and I can select everything all at once and take off the stroke there. So that is just some simple ways that you can create icons inside of Illustrator. When you're finished with your designs, you can save this Illustrator file to be imported into InDesign, or simply select, copy, and paste it into InDesign. If you import the Illustrator file, you can always make changes to that file inside of Illustrator and then update that in InDesign. If you copy paste, you'll need to go back to Illustrator, make the changes, copy those changes. So those are your basics inside of Illustrator. I hope that inspires you to create some great simple icons for your infographic.